Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial, we're going to create this spooky peekaboo resin tray. But first, I want to show you the bundle releasing at GRACEFULLYCCD.com October 5th at 10 a.m. CST time. If you don't already know, Gracefully Created and I do these bundles every single month, and I'm telling you, each and every one just gets better and better. I am not a huge fan of Halloween, but I don't know. There's something about this year and some of the designs that have been out that have kind of grabbed me, especially all of these Western designs. So I went with a Western theme, and look at this, y'all. Look at the little cows. They're so cute. So we have 3 sheets of vinyl, 3 element sheets. We did another spooky scene sheet that will give you at minimum 2 really awesome scene cups or a tray like we're doing. And then we have 3 matching decals. And I mean, every Brittany Barnes boutique bundle has to have florals in it. That's just a must. So we have 2 really beautiful florals that can honestly be used any time of year on cups. I really like to make sure that there's things in these bundles that you can use all year round. I make sure that I pick designs that are really going to help your projects sell, especially if you're doing ready to ship cups or you have options for your customers if they're wanting a custom. All of the decals also coordinate as well as the element sheets. So anything in these bundles can be mix matched and coordinate very well in some way. Again, those will release October 5th at GRACEFULLYCCD.com, and you can use code BBB10 to save 10% off of your order. You want to jump on this bundle fast because it is a discounted rate. It's already coordinated for you, and holy moly, they usually go so fast. All right, let's get to our spooky tray. So I have used a little extra incorporated epoxy to mix in Mirage from PDB Creative Studio, and we're going to place this on the board. I got this board on clearance at Hobby Lobby. They were clearancing out their spring shop selections, and I grabbed all the trays and boards I stocked up. And the only thing that I did to this tray before applying my epoxy and glitter was just clean it off. I took a damp rag, not a super wet one, because you don't want the wood to soak in any of that moisture before you're applying your epoxy. But I did take a damp rag, wipe it off to make sure any dust particles were off of it, and then it was ready to go. Y'all know I have been using a little extra incorporated epoxy for some time again now. I originally started, like my very first tumbler was with a little extra incorporated epoxy. I was with them for a couple of years, and I decided to kind of branch out just honestly because I hadn't tried anything else out there. There's all these new products everyone was, raving about, and I did find a couple of really awesome epoxies. However, I always found myself reaching back for my little extra, especially if I was going to sell those tumblers or if I sent them to any followers. And one of those main reasons is because it is so incredibly shiny. I mean, it shines for days. And then another reason is its thin viscosity. For a very long time, I haven't been able to mix my glitter into my epoxy because a thick viscosity epoxy is not going to release those bubbles that get trapped underneath your glitter very well. And for me, I'm a fast mixer, so that causes a problem for me. When I mix my epoxy, I create tons of micro bubbles because I whip it like I don't have time. So anytime I mix my ALE, it immediately starts releasing bubbles in the cup. I never have to heat my part A or part B, and when I mix glitter into the epoxy and put it on a tray like this, all it takes is a quick torch, and I will show you here in a bit whenever I add on my final coat how quickly the ALE epoxy releases bubbles on its own even without heat. Now, don't get me wrong, I do like a thick viscosity epoxy in some cases, especially when going over a super chunky raw glitter. It's really helpful because it helps give more coverage, but that's a compromise that I am absolutely willing to make to use a little extra and not get any micro bubbles in my finished product. So once that layer of glitter and epoxy had completely dried, I cut out some spider web stencils. Now, I am actually using transfer tape for this. I decided to test it out, and honestly, I won't do it again. I had ran out of my stencil vinyl, and I just figured this was pretty similar, and it's definitely not. It worked okay, and it cut okay. I did take some finagling to get all of those negative areas out of the spider webs, and then you'll see here in a minute after I spray paint, there's some areas that didn't really want to stick very well. But that was okay since we're going to cover it up with so many of those white elements. So just long story short, since I'm rambling, just use a temporary vinyl or a stencil vinyl to cut out your peekaboo stencils. Now, once I have my stencils on, I constantly went back and tried to press them down, but it didn't work all that well. So I took some painter's tape and went along the edges of my tray just to protect the sides from the spray paint, because I wanted to spray paint sort of a starry night, spooky sky situation on here. And I did try to spray paint this on camera in my room, but the spray paint wanted to, or the overspray wanted to shoot straight up. I'm assuming because the edges of the tray was higher. So I did end up taking this outside and not able to have a camera right on that because I, of course, didn't want spray paint particles all over my phone camera. For our colors, we're going to use all my Color Shot paints. We're using Stamp Passport, Sugar Coated, Orange Slice, Smolder, which Smolder is one of my favorites, and Wine Stain. I just put Smolder on first to have our black base and then went in with the others in very short bursts until I was happy with the results. We're going to give this another coat of epoxy before we add on our elements. And in my epoxy, I'm going to mix in Galactic from PDB Creative Studio and Diamond Dust to give it a little extra shimmer. Once that epoxy layer had dried, it's time to cut out our elements and add them on. Now, I know some of y'all are like, so they're not pre-cut? No, they're not. And the reason being is, I promise you, Judy at Gracefully Created has asked me multiple times in the past to spread my images out just a little bit more so she can pre-cut them for us. But here's the thing. If I spread them out more so she has room to cut the individual images for y'all, then you lose images, which means you lose bang for your buck. And I'm all about saving some money whenever it comes to customs especially. But even when you're doing ready to ship items, you really want as much as possible on one element sheet so you can make more projects or even coordinate them with, say, a tray, a tumbler, and a keychain. And with me being able to pack them so close together on a sheet without being pre-cut, you get that. So when you cut these out yourself, you want to cut it as close to the image as possible and make sure your edges are rounded. Use a sharp pair of scissors so it doesn't fray the ends of your cut either, and you can get them pressed down really well, and it has a nice clean edge around the image. It will disappear once you apply epoxy, all of that clear border. But once I have all of these elements on the tray, rather than take a squeegee over top of this, I don't want to scratch my epoxy up or miss anything, since my large 12-inch squeegee is not going to fit on here very well. I'm going to take a washcloth, and honestly it would be better if it was microfiber. But I'm going to take that and kind of put it over the end of my finger and really press down on those decals and rub them down so you can see that clear border almost disappear. It helps get all of those images pressed down really well, especially in between where you have lots of that clear portion of the vinyl, without getting any oils or residue from your hand on there, no fingerprints on your dark epoxy layer underneath, and you're not scratching it up with a squeegee tool. I want my images to shimmer as well, so I'm going to add some more diamond dust in here. I did overkill it just a little bit. It's really easy to do with this. You only need a tiny bit, even for a lot of epoxy, and that was a lot. So when you add in micas to your epoxy, just add a teeny tiny bit and it will add a ton of shimmer. Now, I was talking about how well ALE epoxy releases those microbubbles, and I wanted to zoom in here. If you can see all of those tiny little bubbles just automatically raising to the top, even without heat, and popping themselves on their own. It's satisfying to watch, so I wanted to show that to y'all too. After that final layer of epoxy was on, this tray was complete. I love the way that this turned out. I did a very similar element sheet in one of my bundles last year for Halloween. This one is completely different, but sort of the same idea, and we made a tumbler with it. So this time I wanted to make a tray, and it did not disappoint. I hope that y'all have enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. All materials I have used will be in the description below with some coupon codes for you. That is all for today. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.